Today we are joined by a very special guest, CEO of Cricket West Indies, Mr. Dehring. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. Good to be in Barbados.
Fantastic. Okay. Now I want to start with the beginning with you, and you've been CEO for a few months now. Talk to me about how that tenure has gone so far.
It's been quite an emotional return for me, coming back to West Indies cricket. So it's been a joy, but also, of course, hitting the ground, having to hit the ground running has also been a little stressful.
Yeah.
There's so many new players, new structures in the world of cricket. I've tried to keep abreast as much as possible over the years, but obviously, who feels it knows it, so it's a little different. But it's been exciting just to get around, to meet people again, meet the new players, meet lots of old faces. It's just been overall, that's a very satisfactory thing for me. And hopefully I'm starting to make a contribution to an institution we all know and love.
For sure. So our viewers at home may not know too much about you. I want to talk to you about you as the person. Tell me about your passion for cricket. Where did that start from?
Well, my passion for cricket started from a very early age. My father would have registered me as a member of Kingston Cricket Club from birth, because back then it would have been an extremely difficult thing to become a member of Kingston Cricket Club. He happened to have become a member, and so he wanted the best for his children, and so
sure.
he registered me from birth. I would have played on the steps of Kingston Cricket Club. He would have dragged me down to cricket every time there was a cricket match at Sabina Park.
Wow.
Of course, when you're very young, you don't quite appreciate what's going on the field, but I associated cricket from a very early age with fun and having a good time.
Yeah.
Also, you could miss school.
Yeah, for sure.
That was all. So my earliest memory was just of this incredible roar, one cricket match. Just an incredible roar that went around the ground that frightened me. And I looked up to see this really tall gentleman with his collar turned up, open the gates of Kingston Cricket Club where I was playing.
Right.
And he was walking out onto the field with this incredible roar. Now, I didn't consciously know who it was and so on, but I deduced that must have been Sir Gary Sobers.
Wow.
And because the collar turned up,
Right,
I remember the walk out, and I remember the just incredible roar of the Sabina crowd.
Wow.
And so emotionally, I just had a very special attachment to Sir Gary. I wouldn't have been very conscious of all of his records and all that what he was doing, but I just knew of his stature. This was Sir Gary.
Yeah.
The walk, the color, etc. And I know I would have probably tried to imitate him a few times. And in fact, when I went on to run the Cricket World Cup many years later, I had to host Sir Gary at a luncheon. And I gave a little speech at the luncheon, and Sir Gary was sitting to my left. And my wife said to me afterwards, "Chris, I've heard you give 1,000,000 speeches all over the world. I've never heard you sound so nervous."
Wow.
And I say, "You have to understand, I used to pretend to be him." Which it's a really a surreal moment to be in his presence. But that emotion, that attachment to cricket, I wouldn't tell you cricket was my favorite sport, but you always knew the specific importance of this institution called West Indies cricket.
Yeah. Okay, I want to talk to you about your time as a cricketer. We spoke about it briefly off air, that you played for Jamaica under 19 level. How was that?
I was playing for Jamaica under 19. I played both football and cricket for Jamaica up to under 19 level. And at some point, I was absolutely sure I would play for the West Indies. I was batting number 3 for a very powerful Jamaica team, including Courtney
So you were quite good.
In my head, certainly I was a legend up to that point.
Right.
Courtney Walsh, Patrick Patterson, Robert Haynes, Wayne Lewis. Had a really good team. In fact, we were the defending regional champions. And we started to play against teams like Leeward Islands and Trinidad and Guyana. And you're starting to see the gap between yourself and certain players who, I will tell you, when I first saw Richie Richardson, I made up my mind that I'm not going to play for the West Indies. I'm certainly not going to bat number 3.
Right, yeah, for sure. He's got that.
He's got that. And you saw guys like Phil Simmons and Roger Harper and so on. You know you have some ability, but you know who are special. That these are the guys that are going to go on to play for the West Indies. You see that very early. So I took up a football scholarship and went to the States.
And how was that journey for you?
So that was great. I mean, I remain an avid sports person. I play football still regularly. Cricket, not so much, because as you get older, that ball seems to get faster and harder. But I still play a lot of sports. I follow sports passionately. I believe in the cross-pollination of sports, sporting techniques, sports development. It has happened all over the world. When I hear people talk now about in football the high press and as a new technique and strategy that Pep Guardiola has sort of perfected and so on. The high press started in the 1950s in ice hockey.
Really?
It migrated into basketball. Okay. It then migrated into football. So training and development in terms of physical development of athletes have cross-pollinated as well. The track and field people have helped to influence football training, which has helped to influence cricket. Baseball, in terms of techniques of throwing, they develop certain techniques of throwing that then has crept into cricket and so on. So there's always that need to follow all sports because all sports influence each other.
Okay. You were telling me also off air about your role starting Sports Max. I don't think many of our viewers or listeners would have known that. Can you talk me through that journey and how that started?
Well, it was an accident of history in that I was working with Cricket West Indies. Western Freeboard back then had seconded me from my investment bank in Jamaica for a 3-year tenure. It was supposed to have been to set up the commercial operations of Western Cricket Board as well as put together a bid to host the Cricket World Cup in 2007.
Right.
So I was approached by the board then. I was on secondment for 3 years, going around the world and negotiating broadcast rights and so on. I realized there were certain rights that were available, and the Caribbean, nobody had them for the Caribbean. And I thought, hey, maybe Cricket West Indies, but Western Cricket Board back then could have captured it and started their own television channel and so on. And so I went out and actually committed to the English Premier League that we would take those rights back in 2001. And I went to the board and they just weren't interested. But so I also went to the television stations around the region if they were interested in the English Premier League and so on. And they weren't interested. So I got stuck with these rights that I now personally had to pay for. So I said, why not? Let's just start Sportsmax. And that's the rest is history.
Something beautiful was born from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. The Breakout League recently concluded. You guys decided to do something new and it was well regarded, quite successful. Talk to me about the need for that competition and how successful do you think it has been?
Well, what we're trying to do, we've done gap analysis, looking at all the different gaps within our production pipeline that need to be filled. So this is just one particular gap where in between playing your under 19s and your regional T20s and so on, there's a gap to CPL. So if you're not playing in the CPL, how do we develop players and identify new players that can play for the West Indies, the T20s, and so on? And so we decided, hey, that's another important gap to give people an opportunity to showcase themselves, develop their skills. And so the Breakout T20 is that league. It's no different from, say, the Grind, which helps to support NBA, Next, MLS Next that supports Major League Soccer in the US and so on. So the Breakout is our version of that, trying to identify new talent, give some of the older talent an opportunity to showcase themselves again, to hopefully get into a CPL team, an IPL team, or all these franchises around the world and so on, which quite frankly, even though they're somewhat a challenge for us as Cricket West Indies. You know, so many franchise leagues developing around the world. We also recognize it's an incredible opportunity for our cricketers. It helps to pull young cricketers into the system, now knowing that cricket could be a viable, sustainable, professional career. And so we have to try and make the best of both worlds. Obviously, you know, trying to take advantage of the upsides while mitigating the risks of the downsides.
Okay. Now, it's the pilot season, so you don't get everything right in the pilot season. What are some of the things that went well, and what are some of the things you would like to improve on from that season?
Well, listen, there's going to be lots of debates about what went well and what didn't, but certainly we think there are a few players that really came out of it. To my mind, obviously we're going to do our entire post-mortem. We thought the production was fantastic. The crowds were not there that we had hoped, because that is also an important part of development. You know, my coach, youth team coach back in the day, J.K. Holt Jr., which was a former West Indies player, said to me once, a half volley is a half volley, whether you get it in schoolboy cricket or test cricket. The only difference is that in test cricket, it's in front of 10,000 people, and you might not even recognize it as a half volley because of that additional pressure. Yeah. So crowds and playing in front of crowds is an important part of a player's development. And so that's one of the things we're going to work on in terms of the promotion. The Trinidadian government, the new government, has pledged that, hey, listen, that this will not happen again. We will absolutely get involved and make sure that the crowds are there to support and to pressure your players, because it's all about, you know, forging and turning these lumps of coal into diamonds.
Yeah. Okay. Now, fan support. Fan support has been something that we've been missing a little bit in Test cricket for our red ball teams. How is that? How do we, obviously Australia coming in the summer? How do we improve that for the summer?
Well, look, I'm not going to tell you that we have the absolute solution, because if we did, all test cricket around the world would jump on it. We've in the past done so many initiatives to attract different types of fans with different fan experiences and so on. The party stands, for instance, was something that had been created in the Caribbean. In fact, Antigua started it all, and there was an incredible debt of gratitude. The world of cricket, I believe, owes to Antigua for really starting the whole Pakistan concept. Obviously, people give me credit for spreading it around the Caribbean. And I remember back in the day, Barbados was so against the Pakistan because and Test cricket was seen to be almost holy grail, and so on. But you know, there are younger markets that you need to attract. So we're certainly going to make sure the fan experience, and this year is no exception. We have Michael Tejo, his song Energy, which we've adapted for the campaign theme song for the summer, full of energy. So that has been launched. We're hoping to attract a whole new set of people to our test games, test matches. We also, for the first time, have just absolutely said, look, children are free. Anybody under 16, you're free. You don't need a ticket. Don't even think of that there's a barrier because you have to get hold of a free ticket. No. Turn up. Kensington Oval is there for you. It's all yours. This is your sport. This is your team. They need your support. Parents, bring your kids. That's not going to be expense. For older folks over 65, it's half price. So, you know, we just want to make sure that the more important thing is not the revenue from test cricket ticket prices, which is obviously important.
Yeah.
But we think it's more important that it's time that we focus on getting people back to support the West Indies teams. It's an important part of our team strategy. You know, as I will tell people, when you have 10,000 people roaring for an LBW appeal or
It
a
makes a
caught
difference.
behind, it makes a huge difference.
Sure.
And it even if you know, in the current days of TV replays and appeals and so on, you might not get away with so much more of the home field advantage, but it still plays on batsmen's minds. It still adds pressure to the occasions. And so between children being free, and we're going to be almost on a stand by stand, constituent by constituent, coming up with programs to attract young people, different age groups, older people, serious test cricket aficionados, and Barbados is,
Yeah.
300,000 Test cricket aficionados and
Yeah.
experts. So I don't expect we'll have any problems filling the Mecca.
Yeah, we shouldn't. We shouldn't. Test cricket is back in Jamaica. As a Jamaican, you should feel. I guess you're feeling pretty proud about that. I'm pretty happy about that.
Jamaica is a problem, and I think all Caribbean countries need to recognize that. When you have one of your constituents,
Major
2.7 million
constituents. Yeah.
people, so that's half of your raw material, whether it's for fan base, cricketers, what have you, male and female,
Yeah.
and they don't even put forward a bid to host matches in a T20 World Cup, which is the most popular form of the game. You have a problem. And so we're going to address that problem with Jamaica. And part of that exercise is to host matches there. So we're hosting a T20, the test match and T20, some T20s there against Australia. It's the first time that Jamaica is going to be playing a test match on the lights. So we're hoping that is also part of the incentive to get the fans back and to demonstrate to that government that, hey, this thing can be just as important an economic and communication platform for you as Barbados has used it in the past. You look at the Barbados example of how cricket is such an important part of your tourism product. It's just one element, but it's an important element. And we're hoping that the people and government of Jamaica see that opportunity, see the importance of this sport to our region, and rejoin the fight. That's the best way that I can say it. I know the Jamaica Cricket Association is very much on board, and we're working with them to ensure that Jamaica remains an important part of the West Indies cricket culture.
Would you happen to know why Jamaica's lost interest? Not obviously not the entire nation, but why is there a lack of interest in cricket? What happened?
Look, you can speculate, but I don't think that there's a total lack of interest. In fact, what was surprising to learn, the West Indies Cricket Championships ended fairly recently, the 4-day championships. And we streamed all matches. And I personally didn't know anybody who watched the games in Jamaica. But when you looked at the digital data that came out, Jamaica had the largest viewership. So it's clearly a pulse that is there. And perhaps Jamaica is a little bit more of what we call a wagonist than other Caribbean nations. I think all you need is a win. All you need to show is that you're a winner. And all of a sudden, every Jamaican will tell you that they were there supporting you from the beginning. Just like every Barbadian will tell you that we knew we were going to beat South Africa in that one-off test. And so we were supporting
the whole way.
Just because I wasn't there and the stands were empty and we boycotted doesn't mean we didn't love our team. And that's the nature. Winning, we understand. Winning brings and attracts success. And we have to demonstrate that. The good news is that, hey, there's certain little omens I look at and that I'm hoping will help. We have a very young, enthusiastic team that actually drew the last test series against Australia away from home.
Yeah.
And in fact, the last test where we beat the odds and surprised and thrashed Australia was a day-night game.
True. So, yeah. Anything can happen. Can I talk to you a bit about finances? We spoke about children coming in free and over 65 is being half price. How are our revenue streams looking in terms of fans coming into the Caribbean to watch cricket? Are we improving on that front or not quite?
Look, Cricket West Indies will always struggle vis-a-vis its competitors in the world. We're 5 million people, per capita income, nothing to compare, nothing to shout about. And in fact, you can directly correlate if not cause it, the demise of Western cricket or the decline in Western cricket with the growth of television in cricket around the world. So I always explain to people that when we ruled the roost in the 80s, 70s and 80s, we were kings of world cricket. the revenue gap between ourselves and the English Cricket Board or the Indian Cricket Board was no more than 10 or 15 million US a year. By the time I joined West Indies Cricket, and which was one of the reasons the board asked me to come and set up the commercial operations, that gap was about 200 million US a year. The current gap with, say, ourselves and India is 3 billion US a year. And that's just a commercial revenue gap.
Yeah.
So it's not difficult to see why one team is able to pump a few hundred million US a year into their development, and another team is not able to pump any, really. What's going to happen to the teams? It's no different from other professional sports. But that's just on the commercial side. On the national resource side, you'll appreciate that nationally, these countries just have far more wealth. And so nutrition programs in their high schools and primary schools, and availability of gymnasiums and facilities, and just even as basic as cricket balls. You know, when you see the kind of facilities in a high school in Ireland,
Yeah.
you understand, okay, on a national basis, there's quite a significant gap as well. What I always say though is what they don't have is just our incredible athletic quotient in the Caribbean.
Sure.
It is very, you know, I can't tell you the scientific reason behind it, but it is obvious to the naked eye.
Yeah.
Without any need for data analysis. It's obvious to the naked eye. There's a reason why we perform so well at the Olympic Games, which in sports that don't necessarily need a high-tech development and resources that other sports need. You know, cricket is a very expensive sport when you think about all the equipment that's needed from an early age, etc. Versus just running and our ability to run. And you see that incredible athletic talent through the length and breadth of countries like Jamaica, and St. Lucia, Dominica, Barbados, and Trinidad. It's just incredible athletic talent. And then when you see our nationals representing other countries in the world of football, there was a point in time when 9 of the England starting 11 in football were of Caribbean descent.
Yeah.
So so what we were trying to do, and we're obviously going to have to refresh our commercial program, which we're doing, and get back out there on the road, attracting sponsorships, adding inventory of our existing assets like test matches and one-day internationals and T20s to sell to sponsors and so on, selling those TV rights as efficient as we can. But we're looking at also adding new assets, new things that can attract both commercial and national resources. So for instance, yesterday, we officially launched our Project Olympus, and we've written to the ICC and insisting now that the West Indies cannot be left out of the Olympic process, the Olympic qualification for Los Angeles in 2028. Because as you know, we do compete already in the Olympics as individual countries.
Yeah.
But that should not be a disqualifier for a Caribbean team, a West Indies team, whether it's represented by an individual country or not,
Exactly.
from participating in this process. Because I think that's one of the avenues that will hopefully encourage our governments to put a little bit more into national resources into the sport. Right. If there's an opportunity of, hey, Barbados actually getting to the Olympics and playing against England and playing against Australia in the Olympic Games. But if you can imagine the excitement over that type of domestic tournament where you're playing off against Jamaica for
opportunity. Yeah, for sure. Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time, sir. It's been fun, and hopefully see you around.
Well, we'll see you hopefully June 25th at the first test match.
Yeah, I'll be there
Indies versus
for sure.
Australia.
I'll see you then. Thank you very much, sir.